You know, Dave, of course, I always enjoy talking to you, but why don't we add somebody else to the call tonight?
I think you're right. Wonder
Let's
who we could get.
see. Let's pick a name. Let's just look somebody up at random and see if a squad leader.
Or I could just grab a scenario card and pick a name off of it.
Yeah, do that.
All right. What do I have here? I have this thing called Hard Rock. Michael Puccio. Pooch.
Michael Puccio. Oh,
Do you think he does squad leader stuff still?
He probably still does. Let's see if I can find him.
Okay.
This is kind of like on NCIS when they're doing impossible computer stuff within seconds. Yeah, I think I found him, Dave.
Oh.
Let's see.
Does he have a Skype number or account?
Well, if he doesn't, we'll figure it out. One ringy dingy.
Two ringy dingy.
Dingy.
Gentlemen.
Is this Michael Puccio?
Yeah, Pooch, guys. Pooch.
Pooch.
We don't know you well enough to call you that, though.
No, that's my nickname. That's my nickname. I'm glad we all have beards. I shaved mine for this.
Oh, we don't see your picture.
Yeah. Oh, hold on. Okay, hold on, guys. How about now?
There we go. Oh, yes, you do.
Ah,
I look like Brad Pitt when I shave.
You do.
you do.
Man.
You will kind of look alike a little bit, actually.
My
Yes,
girlfriend is sitting here. I told her to be quiet. She's been here 15 seconds.
Wow. Boy, that didn't take long, did it?
Yeah.
Introductions. Okay.
Par for the course. So I did see what you guys did a few years ago with my airborne article. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah.
You probably noticed a distinct uptick in your residual income after that.
Did I? Let's not talk about that. Talk about that, fellas. No, but no, I did appreciate that. That was nice of you guys because, you know, part of the things with ASL is I like doing the different, you know, the rules allow you to do all sorts of stuff, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm a big airborne guy. You know, my email is 82nd Airborne. You know, but I wasn't in. So, you know, when I did that airborne article, that was Ray's idea. You know,
Tapio, yeah.
Yeah, he said, you know, he said you like it so much, why don't you do it? And think about it from like a college point of view. So I said the main thing that it does is it kind of stretches like the Cavalry article, which I did for the annual. I don't know if you guys ever read that. You got it right there. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, show my girlfriend. See how famous I am?
Very
guy.
impressive. Very impressive.
He is famous.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know what's funny though? I have not played a Cavalry Scenario since that article came up. And up and down the East Coast, people come up to me. It's like, you know, advice for women. I got to help them all with Cavalry.
Yeah.
And I'm like, read the article. It's all there. You know.
How do you account for the fact
Yeah,
that
you.
you've not played a cavalry since then?
You know, well, guys, to be honest with you, you know what happened? That was in the mid '90s. I had twins in 1998. And I walked away from the game, and to be honest with you, I did not miss it. I was, you know, I had a few scenarios that I was designing that kind of got stuck in mid-flight. But I had the twins, I had the boy and the girl, and they got me in sports. I was coaching them. And what got me back into the game was after about 10 years. Are you guys familiar with Joe Leosi? Do you know Joe Leosi's name?
Probably read it somewhere, but
the Albany tournament. Have you heard of the Albany tournament?
Yes, sure.
Okay, so he runs that, and it was his brainchild. Basically, well, I better not say it online, but
yeah,
you know, to get a weekend of ASL in without his wife clobbering him. Let's just keep it at that. But we all do that. So basically, what happened was he set this up, and it was in like the 10th iteration, and he called me up like 3 days before. And he was like, could you come? Could you play? I want you to play. Just come. And I hadn't played ASL in 10 years. You can imagine what that's like, right? Taking a 10-year layoff. Mm-hmm. So I did go. And, you know, the competition is fairly tough. You know, I go to Nor'easter, too, which is a little bit more laid back. That's the Yazzle guys. in Massachusetts and Connecticut.
Mhm, yeah.
And I lost my first 2 scenarios, but then I won the next 3, so it was a lot of fun, you know. And to go 500 or 1 game under or 1 game over in that venue was pretty good. There's a lot of plevers there. J.R. Tracy's there. Um, Paul Sidhu, Dunsky, you know, Ron Dunsky, um, Gary May. Really a lot of good East Coast players, you know. So that's how it got me back into it. So in that time, I haven't played any Cavalry. I mean, I might have played one where there was a horse, you know, like one horse and a leader. I might have played that. But it's funny because people come up to you like you're intimate with it. It's like you're helping them with their taxes.
Yeah.
I laugh. I'm like, guys, you know, I haven't played a Cavalry scenario since '95, you know. But I got to play one just to read the article again and get to play it again.
Sure, you should. So kind of like you get. Here's the thing you're going to do. So you're going to study it. Like Jeff and I have been studying the Pacific. We've been playing a ton of Operation Watchtower, and we're going to stick with the. We thought, what do we play next? We go to European theater, and then we realized that then we will forget everything we've spent this year learning. You know,
Yeah,
and
right.
so you studied this thing to great detail, but then 10 years later, right, you're not going to remember all the details of all that.
Yeah, no, it's definitely yeah, I mean it came back to me pretty quickly, you know. You know, I've generally gone 2 and 3, 3 and 2 up there, you know. I'm maybe a game over 500. But it's tough though. It's a tough local tournament, and he gets people from, you know, Sweden, they fly in.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's not ASLOT, but it's the East Coast version of it, you know. I mean, the rounds are set up. Pleva's there. You know, he's the director, so he doesn't often play. He's amazing. If you guys never played him, I mean, he is, you know, the only thing I got over him is I'm a better guitar player. I like to hold that over his head. He's got everything else. He's better looking. He's smart. And all you got to do is ask him. He'll tell you. No, he's a gentleman, though. He really is a gentleman, you know. But
how'd you get into ASL in the first place?
well, it's actually funny. Now, you guys know J.R. Tracy's name, right? You've heard of
Yes.
Yeah,
I think
So
we
JR
interviewed JR. Yeah.
we did. Yeah.
JR? Yeah. Did he mention me?
Yes, of course.
Very fondly.
I don't believe you guys. But anyway, what happened was we met at the first Avalon Con, and we both signed up for Empires in Arms, and we played all weekend. We played there's a revolutionary variant where you're the French Revolution, and we played it all weekend, and then we had some free time on Sunday. So he asked me, he said, have you ever played ASL? I said, not really, but I got all this. I actually had the stuff with me, you know. I never played before. And he said, I've never played. Do you want to try a scenario? So we played Lash Out from the Market Garden, a series of 7 scenarios from one of the annuals.
Yeah.
Called at the time. And we enjoyed it. And he was living in London at the time. And we kept in touch. It was really nice. We used to play by regular mail war games. We used to send the mail back and forth. I mean, yeah, this was in like 92, 93. And, you know, you'd really have like 8 days between moves because the die rolling would be done by the stock exchange. We used to do by the stock exchange. We used to pick a stock.
And then check the daily paper.
Day, you know, and if the mail was late, you would say check the stock as of Tuesday. And if the number didn't end between 1 and 6, or whatever we were using, you'd have to go down to the next stock until you found one between 1 and 6. So we were pretty religious. We played a couple of email games like that for maybe a year or two, and then he came back and we signed up for Avalon Con. You know, we played, you know, when he moved into the city, we played a lot, and then his kids came. We really don't play as much as we used to, but that's how I started. We both started learning together, you know. But cool. he's incredibly, he's a really good player. Really good player.
Yeah, he beat me in one of my first ASL Opens here in Chicago. So that's where I had his name down on my first list of guys like who play ASL from other places, not local, not just my friends. It was the first time I'd gone ever to a tournament and even met strange people.
He's from Chicago, I think, isn't he?
Played the
Cincinnati.
game I didn't know personally. I think he's out. Yeah, maybe Cincinnati
Cincinnati,
now. Yeah. But
That was Yankees.
we did interview him. It was absolutely. He was surprised we picked him. He's also very active on Twitter, so I see all his games that he's playing now.
Yeah, he's got this war room in West 18th Street. Have you guys ever been to New York?
No, I have not.
New York is West 18th Street's nice, and he's got these 10-foot ceilings, and he's got games after games after games. It's really beautiful. I haven't been there in a while, but it's definitely a place a lot of people play in and stuff. So he's a good player, you know. But then really what engaged me was after that tournament, I found out they were doing a Korean War module. And I remember I was telling you guys I had some in flight. So if you look in the... Yeah, there you go. Now, the original name of that was supposed to be Rock and Soul, you know. And then they wanted to call it Rock Hard, and I nixed that. I said no. I said,
good.
I don't want to call it
Good
Rock
job.
Hard. I don't want to call it Rock Hard. And they didn't want to call it Rock and Seoul because the battle took place like 35 miles from Seoul. But I said they were driving on Seoul. But the thing is, when I saw the scenarios, and I got to be honest, I really didn't help out that much, but they did not have a tournament-sized scenario. And I said to myself, even though it's 7.5 turns, it's kind of long, it's definitely probably one of the smallest scenarios in the pack. And I think it's getting the most play, which, knock on wood, I'm very happy with. But the North Koreans seems to have an edge with the North Koreans. So.
Well, yeah, the Korean People's Army won when we played it. We're going to have 4 players get together and play through a bunch of the larger scenarios. So we just happened to have chosen this one right before COVID for our test game. So I did play this one with 4 people, and again, it was short enough. I don't know if we finished it in one night or 2, probably 1. But yeah, I actually did play it. So
did you like it? That's the main thing.
Yeah.
And what side did you have? Were you the South Koreans?
I won with the Korean People's Army.
Okay. Yeah, it seems to favor them a little bit. That's the only one I've done that's officially published, because I usually go through the ASL guys, you know, Carl Noguera and Tom Marin. You know, I've been publishing a lot of the scenarios with them.
With Yankee ASL.
Yeah, so we did. Yeah, that's the new one. That one, let me tell you something. That was a boop to design the victory conditions.
Yeah, because I covered this one. We did it on our last show, Jeff.
Yeah, I think so.
Right? We did these scenarios from. He just sent us the Nor'easter pack to just review kindly from Michael Sprague, and you have the isolated platoon. Right, and so it's a great setup. I was raving about it. I'm like, this one looks really cool. And then you have the parachute infantry coming on to the west edge.
You notice that,
and the Japanese.
Right? Mm-hmm. You notice they're paratroopers, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, 747s. And so then, yeah, tell us about the design of that, if you can, like what problem you ran into, or.
That was kind of interesting, because I work with Tom very closely, and you know, I don't know if you guys ever did anything like that that's creative. You're doing research or stuff. I mean, I'm sure you have. It's just maybe not for ASL.
No. Yeah.
But it becomes like your children, you know. Like I really do play guitar, and I've been writing an album, mostly to keep Nancy engaged.
Good.
And I want to make sure she doesn't run off with a better looking guy than me. And here's 2 right here.
Stop.
So, anyway, so what happened is, you know, Tom is one of the few people, I've known him forever, like probably 25, 30 years. And the first time we met was probably the greatest day of ASL I ever played, because I played Red Stun against my good friend Chris Kavanaugh, who's kind of dropped out of the hobby, but he was I did the replay with him, the Scouts Out. He was the Germans, if you guys have ever read that replay. And JR was actually the Americans, and I was the neutral commentator. And halfway through the game, JR dissed me, and I became the hostile commentator. Because he was getting annoyed with me. I was being too neutrally done. Well, I forget what. I think I was being too picky when we're writing the rules down. So Tom, I trust. So we played this. I saw this because I was doing paratroop scenarios, and this is the same guys that landed on Corregidor later on, you know. And the Japanese in this case, they only really had 1,000 or maybe 1,500 infantrymen, so they decided to prolong the campaign by withdrawing into the jungle. And the paratroopers got frustrated at one point, and that platoon kind of extended itself, and that's what the Japanese were waiting for, you know. So they did cut them off, but the problem was, and I really had to divorce myself from it. I play tested with Rob Arrieta. Do you guys know him? I think he's from. Yeah, he's a gentleman too. He play tested it like 4 times with me before we sent it in, and we could not get the victory conditions to work where it was balanced. I mean, we went crazy, and I told Carl and Tom, and like I said, I trust both of them. But Tom works more in the scenarios with me. That you guys really got to help us with these victory conditions, because just like you said, it looks fun, right? It does look fun. You cut off, you're trying to get to them. The Japanese are trying to hold both forces at bay, So they really worked hard on it. They actually changed the map because I'm a big map 67 guy. I love map 67. I mean, it's like the centerfold in Playboy, map 67. I look at it, I get all excited. I love all scenarios on map 67. So they took it out and they actually made a map. So I actually haven't played that version with the new map.
Yeah, NP1, this new map.
Yes. And the funny thing is one of the biggest things that I have with Tom, I don't think he'll mind me saying it, is he hates the pictures I pick. I pick the pictures. So that one he really hated. He goes, they're just standing there.
They're just
yeah.
Yeah.
They're in the jungle, they're standing there. I said, not everything is a bonsai charge, I said, I think it's kind of cool. You look at the uniforms, so he was begging me to change the picture. I said, no, please. And if you look, can you hold it up again? Let me just see the Americans. Hold it up a little bit. Lift it up. Was there a carbine on there? Oh no, it's the Rock Force. I always make them put for the graphic the carbine because I have one, and it's sitting in my room. So if you look, a lot of my scenarios, the Americans will have the carbine, Yeah, there you go. That picture I didn't pick because I was MMP. They want that, but there's carbines in there, But right. he these scenarios would not be as good without their TLC. I mean, I got to give them credit. The play test is up there. I kind of was bummed out because I forgot to tell him how much Rob played it, because he's not included on the play testers. But here's a shout out to him now. I hope he's seeing it. Rob, I didn't see your name there. I was kind of bummed. My bad. I should have told him, because we played it maybe 5 times. Who knows? And it's a fun little scenario, but 5 times of anything is a little bit much. Yeah. But the other one that I had in flight when I stopped playing really was Thunder from Heaven from the bunker. I did. You don't have. It's not as recent as those, but it was the Varsity series. I did 3 Varsity series, 3 scenarios, and that was the one that was huge. It was really big, where the Americans from the 17th Airborne landed, and then a few minutes later, some gliders from the British 6th Airborne landed on top of them. So it's this wild melee, and to just throw some more chaos theory at you, you got Paradrop, the gliders aren't as bad, but then the Germans have reinforcements that are variable in size and where they come on, because that's really what happened. So it's a big mofo. It's pretty big. It'll take 3 or 4 nights to play, I think. But that one, I was so happy to get out because it was sitting on my computer for like 15 years. And then they said to me, do you have any more Varsity? So I went and I did the other 2, one of which American gliders land on top of a battery of Germans. And I used the new Fortenberry boards, the boards that go double the other way. I just call them the Fortenberry boards because those was the first time I've seen them. Yeah. I was able to incorporate that, and then 3 little bridges, which was the Ox and Bucks from Pegasus Bridge. The Ox and Bucks from Pegasus Bridge. So they were
British.
Yeah, so they had to take out 3 bridges, and that's really tough on them. That's really tough. I think that one could have used maybe a little bit more tweaking, because the British don't seem to win it very often, you know. So, but I got to be honest with you guys. I just wanted to say one thing. My dad got me into history, so this is him.
Oh,
This is
a little
him as my-
higher up.
Yeah,
Oh,
he's my hero. You
yeah.
see, Joe
Yes.
Puccio, Joe Puccio,
Yeah.
and he died. He passed away in 1969 when I was 6.
Oh,
But he had such an effect on me that for the rest of my life, I've always been into history. And there's an article that I wrote in Critical Hit, which was Ray started it, but he never finished it. He was going to have a series of dads in World War II. And
yeah.
I did all this research on my dad, and I found out, he fought in the Battle of Mortain, the Battle of St. Lo. He got wounded, strangely enough, on September 11th, 1944. I did all this research, because he got me into it. And Nan, I got to be honest with you, Nan, she's sitting here, but she's a great girlfriend. I mean, I got very lucky, knock on wood, But I used to sit on the floor with my dad back in the 60s, and we used to watch combat. And, I think we all probably look like we're all in the same age category, guys. So, and I haven't seen it as an adult. So I found out Shecky Green was in the first, half season. And I love Shecky Green. And I said, I got to see some of Shecky's episodes. And, of course, there's one really funny one where he gets captured, and he's got the Germans. He's running circles around the Germans. And, it was on for 5 seasons. And I started watching them with Nancy. And we just started the 3rd season. She's watched 62 or 63 of these episodes.
Wow.
And not not even suffering in silence. She actually likes them. You got to see us talking about it. It really is great to have her share the interest with me. And I remember my dad that way, because I remember sitting there, and I remember a couple of the episodes watching it with him. So
That's great. Where do you watch it? I don't even know where you find combat right now.
well, it was actually I actually lucked out because get the I have a bachelor pad.
Oh yeah, the whole collection.
What it is they have. I got the all five seasons for $40, so it's like $1 a DVD.
Yeah.
Let me tell you something. It's remarkably, except for the vehicles, it's remarkably accurate. That you see them with the M1 thumb and the pinging. I never knew the M1 pinged. When they shot it. They have Panzerfaust. Now they weren't real Panzerfaust, but they look damn close. Like if we made one in our garage, from photographs. I mean, it was really kind of cool. And so many actors: James Coburn, Mickey Rooney, Sal Mineo, who I love, died tragically young. But it's definitely Roddy McDowell we saw last night.
Oh wow.
Richard Basehart.
Couple of Planet of the Apes guys there. Yeah.
That's what I said. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what? Ted Knight is in it 3 times.
Oh really?
At German. And the rule of thumb was if you played a German, you had to speak German. And also, here's another big guy, James Caan, and he was a German sergeant. Very, 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 and the show stands up. I mean, I'm not gonna say it's as accurate as Private Ryan, and
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Vic Morrow gets wounded like 30 times in 150 episodes. So it's a little bit much. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to divert you guys.
No, that's okay. We always like to know kind of the background, like what got you into the game and, what got you into history. So obviously you've explained that, but.
Well, yeah, my father had the books, like the Civil War, American Heritage, with all these big double-page drawings of the battles and the little soldiers. And that really, I think, inspired me to get into making the little armies with the air-fixed miniatures and stuff like that.
Yeah. We all did that, right?
Yeah. And Jeff, you were saying?
Well, I was just going to say that I was going to get us back onto ASL and just ask you how you went from playing ASL to designing scenarios.
Well, what happened is I'm really a type A. Like, this is a real Brooklyn accent. I was born in Brooklyn and raised in Brooklyn. Right? Not like you hear on TV.
Oh.
I mean, I know I sound kind of stupid, but I'm not as stupid as you hear on TV. But what happened, and Nancy will tell you, I tell everybody that. So what happened was I'm not the type to just sit around and do stuff. Like, when I started playing guitar, I didn't have to be a virtuoso on it, but I wanted to sing, so I learned how to sing. I got, my ex-wife taught me how to sing. God bless her, she had a lot of patience. So I started writing songs. So everything is like a evolution. It's like you see Carl Noguera, and you say, oh, he's doing it, I could do it. Now Carl's exemplary. He's a great player, and his research is top notch. But it's just like, oh, well, I want to do that. It's kind of jealousy. It's like John Lennon and Paul McCartney. They both together pushed each other to be better than they were separately, probably.
Right.
So I like writing. I mean, I like writing music. I like writing the articles. I haven't written a long article since I'm back, but if somebody asked me to, I would. I mean, the hardest one was the replay, because that's tedious with all the moves. And
That's right.
Yeah, I've done audio replays where two guys will play here in the basement, and I'll try to keep narrating the hexes they're moving to audially, so we don't have to write it down, and we take a picture every couple of turns, and that alone is a lot of work to make sure I'm trying to state each hex he's moving from A1 to A2 or whatever. So when you're writing that, there's all three players, because I know I don't know how many of those Jeff has read, but it's like one guy is playing one side and the other, and then the neutral commentator. Is everyone writing down all their moves? And
we were doing that. We were doing that, and we were writing down in between what happened. But if you read that replay, I mean, basically JR just ran across the bridge taking like -2 shots with 6 morale troops. Nobody broke. I mean, it wasn't, even he said in the next turn, he said, I wouldn't recommend doing that.
Yeah, no.
And it got, really, guys, it got to the point where he got one guy across. He said, well, I'm going to run another. And he ran 2, and then he ran 3, and then he ran 4. And it's funny because they're both really good players. They're both really great guys. But Chris always had this reputation of being slightly unlucky. And JR always had this reputation of being slightly lucky. So you saw that in that one turn, and it was frustrating for Chris, I think, because he was holding firm. There's a lot of toys in there for the Americans. There's a lot of smoke making. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the scenario.
I read the whole. Which one was it again? Which scenario?
Scouts out.
Yes, yeah. I read that whole replay. I actually would sit and dutifully read, not every little move, but I would read all the commentary and look at all the pictures.
Yeah, I mean, it was just, and I laughed when JR wrote that because it was funny, because he said, I wouldn't recommend you doing that, because I was like shocked. I was like watching this happen. He literally got probably 5 or 6 squads. Nobody, and it was a 2X bridge. It was on board 40. The curvy bridge,
yeah.
Curvy stream.
Yeah.
But that was, what, I wish they would do that again, because I remember when I was first learning how to play, there was one on the Fugitives, and I took out the counters, and I was all happy. I printed out these brand new counters with the counters, and got all sorts of stains on them. And I printed them out, and I went move by move. And I really learned. I said, why did he do that? And if I didn't find it in the commentary, I would go back to the rules, and I would look,
So you studied them well.
Yeah, well, I haven't done it in a while, yeah. But I should. But, it's gone past now for me. Like I said, I'm an average player. I feel like I'm average. On any given day, I could beat most players, and any given day, most of them could beat me. Somebody of Plevis caliber, I know I really don't have a chance against. Carl, I've never beaten. I've played him about 10 times. Tom and I have about 50-50, and all our games are memorable. So we don't even. I mean, it's like great because But I got a bunch of friends in New York. And one thing that I'm always proud to, I always point out to them, is I'm the only one that has one of these.
Oh.
And read that, it's 3rd place from Northeaster. So I sometimes bring this to when we're gaming. I don't let them touch it, but I let them look at it.
Looks like it's the size you could actually hang it around your neck.
Yeah, I think so.
Almost.
I think so. They would hang in here, but I think a little lower, So one of the things is, it comes up when they're abusing me. I said, well, I have a plaque, fellas.
I have nothing left to prove.
Yeah, well, basically, I know they're going to be watching this, so I had to edge that in there,
So when you get into a scenario design, how do you come upon the content that you want to use? From reading history books or?
Yeah. I mean, basically that. I mean, the Korean War stuff. They have another one of mine called. It's my some of the. They were laughing at a man called Hogjaw, but that was the guy's name. They called him Hogjaw because he had no name. It was HJ. His name was HJ, and he got killed. He got killed in that battle. So yeah, I've come across some stuff. I had a, yeah. So they were like, "What is up with that name?" And I said, "That's the guy's name." That's a fun one. That it really is a fun one. We enjoyed playing that. It's kind of big, but we definitely enjoyed designing that. There's another one.
Do you remember where the idea for this one?
Yeah, the Marine. I you know what? I'm in the middle of packing to move, but there's this thing online that's like 5 billion pages about the Marines in Korea, and you read about the Marines in Korea, and the first thing you check out is let me look at Incheon, right? So I mean, because Incheon was MacArthur's masterpiece. They cobbled together that Marine division. It really wasn't a cohesive force yet. It was a cakewalk until they got to Seoul. But these guys ran into this position, and it was a bitch. It really was a bitch. And he literally had the planes fly a dummy run just to keep their heads down. So because they were deathly afraid, obviously, of the aircraft because they were dropping napalm on them. Go figure. But so yeah, I mean, I read a lot of books. I mean, one book on Korea, if anybody's interested, is Colder Than Hell. And the guy's name, he was a lieutenant. His name was Joe. I can't remember his last name. It escapes me. But it really is about squad leader-like tactics in Korea. And he was in the company, and he was in charge of the mortar platoon. And you learn a lot about mortars, the 60-millimeter mortars. And unfortunately, the officers had gotten wounded and killed, and he took over the company by the end of the campaign. He got wounded retreating from Chosin. He got stitched. He was in the hospital for over a year. Got stitched. Wow. Yeah, great book, Colder Than Hell. I cannot remember his name, and I'm embarrassed, but because I've read it, I think. But Squad Leader Tactics, folks, that's a good one. Okay. Obviously, I read a lot about paratroopers, so I like them a lot. Mostly the American ones, American and British, mostly the Western Allies. But I've played basically all the paratroop ones that are out there. But I'll get a book like, I got one back there. If I can see it, I'll pull it out.
We notice he's wearing pants.
Yes, he is.
Yes, okay.
Oh.
Even though he doesn't have to.
Yeah, we're not. Yeah.
So this is a book. Believe it or not, I found it 30 years ago in Strategy and Tactics. Oh, put those legs down.
I'm not wearing pants.
I can't.
You're wearing shorts, I hope. So this book, I found this book in Strategy, The Complete Strategist, and it's a gaming store in New York. There used to be 2 of them, but now there's only 1, I think.
I think I've seen ads for them somewhere, yeah.
Yeah, you should see them in Strategy and Tactics, right?
That's where. Mm-hmm.
So what happened was, this was there, and it was there for years, and I bought it maybe 20 years ago for like $35. I mean, look at the size of this book, right?
Oh, yeah.
That would be 60. So if you look, you see all these little things?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got bookmarks and all over.
Those are my 82nd Airborne scenarios. I read the book 10 years ago. These things have been here in 10 years. I got to get to it.
Oh, he's got things to do.
I started it. Yeah, I started them, and I made them non-drops because what I did was I had so many airdrops. I said, you know what? I said, let me look at non-drops, and this book is great. And there's another book called The Sword of St. Michael, which is again about the 82nd Airborne. But one of the scenarios I'm looking at doing there is, you guys are familiar with the crossing of the Wile during the Market Garden.
Yeah.
Julian Cook, in the movie it's Robert Redford, Hail Mary, full of grace.
Yeah.
Well, Gavin was watching that, right? Just like they show in the movie. But he got called away because the Germans were overrunning the landing zones. So he didn't watch the end of that. He didn't know what happened. He had to leave because the landing zones were in big trouble. So I'm doing one of those scenarios is on that. And it's a lot of A lot of German AA guns, mounted AA guns on half tracks and trucks, were involved in it,
Mhm.
and they just basically cleared it before the gliders came down, right? So he had to leave, and it really, the wall gets all the attention because it was, you know, it was they were obviously very brave, you know, but the division saved itself there because if they got overrun, they were in trouble. You know, they were in big trouble. You know, and the gliders were coming down, and the Germans were setting up AA guns around the landing zones. So they would have shot the gliders to pieces. It would have been a massacre, just like, you know, they were always afraid of. You know, landing zones of gliders, Nancy.
Oh, thank you.
Drop zones of parachutes.
Okay.
So she'll retain that.
Try to remember that. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
It's-
she's taking notes, I'm sure.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
So you've got also this LZS. It's the Operation Varsity Series. Is the Operation Varsity Series a series of scenarios that are all appearing in the dispatches from the bunker?
Yeah, that one is done. What it is Vic Provost does dispatches, and again, great scenarios. And Tom and Carl are very active on it. A lot of the ASL folks, Ted Wilcox, excuse me, Jim Povey, Lieutenant Colonel Povey, or maybe he was a colonel. Excuse me, Jimmy. You see Bob Tofano, who I'm good friends with, Tom, you know, Carl Noguera.
Tom Morin, yeah.
Yeah, Tom Morin is he's that's the Tom I was speaking of. If I wasn't clear.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So what Vic does is you're allowed to do a series, which I think that's going to be the 82nd Airborne one when I get to it. If you got 3 scenarios, so he'll let you do 3. So when I did the Thunder from Heaven, he asked for the other 2. So LZS, which is I wish I had another name for it because I can never say it. I have to stop and think. That's the one I was talking about where the paratroopers landed around the battery and they had to knock out the guns. They basically had to knock out the guns. That's actually a lot of fun because if you look, the Americans actually, I think, have some 75 pack howitzers that they could conceivably get into the battle. It's very hard. Yes, you're looking at it, right?
I have 2 of them, yeah.
Yeah. And the third one is 3 Little Bridges, and that's just a British glider troops alone one. And that one's really hard on the bridge. I really feel like we could have tweaked it a little better. But, you know, it's definitely fun. I mean, they were using...
This has 18 gliders come in and 2 Jeeps. I assume that comes off of the gliders?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what I did was then, you know, when I did Bro Bay Brouhaha, I was looking for something, again, that was just more mainstream because I'm doing all these, you know, gliders and all these crazy things, you know. So I wanted to do something that was more mainstream because I also did another little one that Tom really should get credit for. Unnoticed Victory. Tom is a big Wake Island guy, you know, like we all got our little niches. Yeah, there you go. And that is one of the craziest ones I ever did. And it actually, these American civilians and Marines, small number of Marines, actually succeeded in wiping out a company of Japanese Marines. I mean, nobody knew about it because Wake fell, and you know, the survivors were prisoners, and some of them were later executed. You know, so I saw that. It's a book called Pacific Alamo, and I saw that and I said, why doesn't anybody know about this? Now, Tom obviously did, but if you look at the scenario, it's a really crazy crazy rules, you know, this and that, the other thing. I mean,
it's a desert board also, 30?
Yeah, it's a desert
Yeah,
board.
I was trying to figure out what that board was. It's a desert board. Okay.
Yeah, we put some hillocks on it and stuff.
Yeah.
Because it basically was a beach.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a beach. But the island was so, you know, I mean, it's shaped, I think there's Wake, Peels, and Wilkes. And I think that it's, you know, it's mostly sand and scrub. I mean, he changed. Now, Tom really did a number on that. It was like he took an ugly duckling and he really made it into a fun scenario. But you have to be in the mood for it. Maybe you have to have a drink or 2, you know, because it's definitely out there. But you come across stuff like that, you know. The flying column, which is the one that I did in the other one that I did in this pack.
Yeah.
I just came across this. I mean, I was always interested in the Philippines. The Japanese are actually my favorite nationality to play. So, and the first Cav has that great history. They have the great patch, and this one was a little tough because I really had it envisioned that it was a river. They were crossing this very shallow river, but the battle really didn't take place until they got into the town. So the OB makes it interesting, I think, because the Japanese have some guns, and the Americans have the Shermans. They have the M8 Scout cars, which Nancy rode on one 2 weeks ago with me.
Oh,
Oh,
I
wow.
told her she's a girlfriend, I tell you. She rode it. It was a little bit tough getting in the turret, but once we were in the turret, we were all set. And they have cup holders. You know that? Cup holders.
Who would have thought?
They had carbine holders. Which
Oh,
yeah, there you go. I brought my carbine, but I couldn't. They didn't want me to take it out.
Yeah.
But so it's interesting. I like the priests are in there too. There's some good leadership. That one comes down to a real slugfest. I have to think of it as not Stalingrad because it's all huts and stuff, but it comes down to a slugfest in the town. And again, it's the OBs are split in two. The Japanese are holding off, I think, from the 8th Cavalry. Some guys who crossed downstream and came upstream now to attack them on the flank. So there's two battles, going on there. And it's interesting too, because if you're trying to teach somebody to play the Japanese, that little force is always a good, thing to say. Hey, you take these guys, and I'll take the main guys, and I'll show you, what to do, But of course, the Japanese are different attacking and defending. There's a world of difference,
When you do these, do the write-ups,
Yes.
historical write-ups? So
You didn't find a grammatical error, did you? Because I'll be embarrassed.
Now that Douglas MacArthur had actually set foot on Luzon, he thirsted after, even more so, the glory that would accompany the recapture of Manila. I like the way you just sort of weave in some. You've got some thoughts there about Mr. MacArthur, I think.
Of course, we all do. Now, I didn't serve, so I don't think of him as a god. But you know what? He also had, for the amount of fighting he did, the number of casualties incurred was remarkably low. I mean, really, they do say that about him. And the Incheon thing, I mean, regardless of his megalomania and he wanted to be president, that Incheon thing, I mean, I don't know how familiar you guys are with that, but the Navy told him no. It was like a hard no, prom date.
Yeah. Like the tide wasn't right or all kinds of things.
Well, the tide drops 35 feet.
Yeah.
So what happens is the first wave would land and it'd be stranded there because there'd be no water. And he got up with not any preparation. And I was just telling Nancy this a couple of weeks ago. And he gave a 45-minute speech off the top of his head. And he ended with, "During my career, the Navy has never let me down. And I know they shall not do that now." He goes, we have to do this. And it was brilliant. It was brilliant. And then it was followed 2 months later by debacle at, up north because he insisted on pushing to the Yalu.
In Incheon, or the Yalu River and I had a friend that ran a game store, Charlie Prosek, down here. He was selling all the war miniature games and stuff, and bought all my ASL there in the beginning. He passed away, but he was there.
At Chosin?
When the Chinese overran,
Oh.
he was one of the guys escaping.
Read Fox Hill, because they got cut off, and they actually were the plug that stopped the Chinese from overrunning the whole division. Interesting story about the carbine though. The carbine has my military buddies like to tease me because it's a girly gun, and it's an M1 carbine, and you go online, and sure enough, there's girls in bikinis shooting the goddamn thing. So I'm like, well, first of all, I wouldn't mind those girls' company. But second of all, I said, look at this picture of Guadalcanal. You got all these Marines with all these, unfortunately, I don't like to see anybody die, but dead Japanese, and they're all holding carbines. So it had a 15-round mag, and it was light. It's only 5.5 pounds, depending on the wood. But at Fox Hill, they were taking weapons from the wounded, and they found out that the carbine rounds, which are just pistol rounds, I don't know how much you guys know about guns. I don't know a whole lot, but I know a lot about the carbine. It's a 30 caliber pistol round. It's not only small, but it's a pistol round. It's like this.
Wow.
The Chinese winter clothing was stopping the bullets. So the Marines was yelling to each other, "Go for the heads if you got a carbine. Go for the heads," because, you know.
Yeah.
And they just had no penetrating power. They
Wow,
really
I
are.
didn't know that. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're cool looking guns. I mean, you know, when we went to the Living History, a lot of the guys were carrying them, but mostly because they're light. You know, mostly because they're light. And to go back to combat, Rick Jason carried one, and they tried to give him a Thompson. He says, "I'm not carrying that goddamn thing for the next 5 years." You know, 'cause that's like 18 pounds or 15 pounds. You know, and it's all metal. So unfortunately, Vic Morrow got stuck with it.
Yeah, that's right. I remember him.
Yeah.
And
So
who carried the BAR? Was that Cage?
Kirby, that's
or-
Nancy's favorite.
Okay.
Kirby.
Yeah.
My
I-
favorite is Little John. If you watch
Little
this,
John, yeah,
big
sure.
guy.
Yeah.
I also liked Billy, who was his little friend.
Uh,
The first 2 seasons, and they were like best friends. And Little John was 6'8", and Billy was 5'7" and about 120 pounds, like the typical American guy who was drafted or in the war. You know, you guys, just as a side, go online because there's a couple of episodes online. If you guys want to mail me, look and see which ones are up there because I can recommend a lot of the episodes, the ones that are good. Some of them aren't so good, you know, but some of them are really, really, really kind of interesting, you know. But that's what I do because I do a lot of reading about the history. You know, I do a lot of history reading. So I just finished a book on Vietnam called 9 Days in May about the 4th Infantry in the Highlands.
mm,
And, you know, now I'm reading a book about the Constitution because with all the stuff going on in the country about the Constitutional list, the 14th Amendment that, the impeachment, this, the other thing, I said to myself, I really don't know a lot about this. You know, and I don't want to have somebody on TV telling me about it. I want to read about it. What were they actually thinking when they say the framers? What were the framers thinking? And I'm getting a lot of interesting stuff that I didn't know about. You know, but I'll get on a campaign. You know, like Corregidor. You know, I was doing all these paratrooper ones, and that was in the first Yazzle pack, and that one Carl loves. You have that one? I like when you guys show me my stuff.
Now we found a list of 10 scenarios you designed on when we searched your name in the Jeff thought of it, the ASL Scenario archive.
yeah.
So there's more than 10 then I think.
Yeah,
There's my critical hits are over in a box, so I didn't dig those out.
Critical hit. Let me tell you something about. I did one scenario for them called Purple Hawk Corner.
Yes,
And
that's in there.
let me tell you something. I had this bunker. I had my own bunker in the basement. I had all my friends play testing that one. And do you know why? That was my father's first time in combat. And
Wow.
so what happened was I said, I want to do something for my dad, you know, that says, you know, listen, you know, you pass this on to me. He was in the 35th Infantry Division. And, you know, I wanted to do this. And it was actually kind of cool because it was kind of, the boards are kind of crazy. And there was a Gestapo headquarters, which was fortified, but it was held by like conscripts or maybe second line troops. But you know how we have the pictures, right? The picture on that scenario is my dad with an M1.
No.
Okay.
And it's stateside. It's stateside, but you know, I got him there. You know, I got him there. And believe me, I went through the rest of his trying to find out if there was any other battles I could do, and that was the only one. And it was the first time in combat. It's actually July 11th. So he was in combat for 2 months. So that's why I did that one. But the other one in the Yazzle pack is called Dropping Topside, and it's about the Corregidor drop. And one thing that really makes me kind of happy and proud of some of the stuff I've done is Carl Noguera loves that scenario. Him and I play tested it a couple times on Vassal, and he is like, he uses it in tournaments, and people don't want to do airdrops in a tournament, you know, if they think they're competitive. I mean, if they're a regular guy like me, you know, I mean, you might want to do it just for fun, but even still, because you could get so much randomness, you know, between broken squads, landing in the water, you know, all this stuff. They don't, you know, people get turned off. But that's a fun battle because they had in that one, the Japanese captured 2 American 50s, and they turned them loose on them, you know.
Oh.
And there's some Americans, I believe, on the ground. So that one he loves. I mean, he's always telling me, you know, we got to get this one some playtime out there. I mean, I think it's the raw record shows that maybe it's been played 10 or 12 times, but I consider that pretty good for a paratroop scenario, you know, because like I said, people shy off of it, you know.
Looks
You looking
good.
for it? You're looking at it?
I'm looking at it on the ASL archive, so there's a
So they don't publish the scenario. They
No.
just do statistics about it and
Yeah,
tell you what it's about. Yeah. So you.
What's the record? Can you tell me the record, Jeff?
uh,
That one, you know, because in the Pacific they didn't have the airdrops like they had obviously in Europe. It was hard to find something, and you know that drop was interesting because they basically, you know, the sticks, and again I really, you know, paratroopers are my thing. They used to have 18-man sticks, so the golf course and the parade ground was so small that they figured even with slow flying C-47s, you know, at 1,500 feet, they can only get 6 man out at a time.
mm.
So what was the name of the scenario again?
Dropping tops.
dropping topside. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll get it on work. Keep going.
So basically, what happened was they had these 2 circles of C-47s dropping off 6 men at a time, and when you got the 18th guy out, you flew away. You know, but there was a lot of injuries because the American bombardment, the air bombardment, the day before they got hit by a huge raid of like 60 A-26s, and you know Corregidor's small. It's actually shaped like a tadpole. It's small, and topside is the head, the biggest part. But there was so much. There was no drop zone. It really wasn't a drop zone. It was like dropping him on a football field. And these guys came out of the planes, and they dropped. Some of them landed in the jungle. Some of them landed in Manila Bay. At least 20% of them, I think, were hurt on landing. Because what happened was the American bombardment and the American airstrikes did what the Japanese could never do, and it made it like a moonscape, you know. So there was metal, there was concrete. If you look at the scenario setup, that's one of the things that I think Tom and Carl like about when we work together, is I have a lot of randomness. So if you look in that one, I think there's random smoke and there's random rubble and there's random, you know, this and random that. So basically, because they didn't know what they were landing in, you know.
Yeah, and it gives it a lot of replay value that way. It has three Japanese victories and 2 American victories.
Yeah, he's always wanting. That's why Carl wants to get it out there. He thinks it's a great scenario. So if you guys take anything from this, play it, because I like that one.
We don't have that pack yet, so
it's the first one.
if someone wants to send it to us, gratis, we will be glad to talk about all the scenarios.
I'll tell you if you. I'll tell you what, you guys play it, and we'll talk again about playing it because I love that one.
Yeah,
it'd be fun.
I think a lot of your
Ferry Pack Soul, I get $1. You know that, right?
and a lot of your scenarios do seem to be these more unique situations. So they really all look fascinating. Is it difficult also? I mean, like the one with the cut off Americans, Brobe, Bruhaha.
Yeah, I mean, impossible.
But like this one, is this retaking the island, Wake Island?
No. What happened?
American guns are broken.
Yeah, when the Japanese landed, right? The Americans defending that part. And I think it's Wilkes Island. Yeah, it's Wilkes Island. So basically, the Americans had like fled because the guns were broken, and about 100 Japanese Marines landed. So this is not retaking the island. This was their attempt to retake the guns. And this was in December of 1941. So you know how the war was going, right? So when they went to go retake the guns, they wiped out all the Japanese. I'm reading this and I'm like, what the hell? They're throwing rocks at them. There's 50 Marines, and you know they're armed with Springfields. Not, you know, it's not a 1944 Marine squad. And there's these unarmed civilians, you know, picking up Japanese rifles, and they were going against Japanese elite Marines, and they basically wiped them out.
Yeah, so you have the 458 Marine, the smallest firepower, I think. Right.
But do you see the Americans? I believe, and I haven't looked at it in a while. The Americans have a lot of machine guns, though. They have like 250s.
Yep.
They basically those were like AA batteries back then. So there was a lot of 50 caliber machine guns just lying around, and there's a Hero or two, right?
Yeah.
You know, Yeah, because a couple of them were like just incredibly brave.
How do you decide where to have them all set up in this like small groups in separate areas of the board? Was that kind of in the story, the history you were reading, or
what happened was in the book? Let me tell you something. I pulled my hair out, right, trying to figure it out, and I don't want to give Tom or Call anything that's not. In this case, it was Vic Provost too, as well. I didn't want to give him anything that's not really played or thought out or planned. So what I did was I did try to figure it out, and I did have something that I think was close. But Tom, like I said, is a Wake Island fanatic. So he's also, I don't see many Wake scenarios. He's got
No.
I think he's done two himself. He had access to some sort of historical documents that I didn't have, and he just changed everything. And, he told me. I mean, he changed. It didn't change the flavor. He changed the actual nuts and bolts. But when he got back to me, he goes, "Hey, listen." He goes, "I have this stuff. You didn't have it. I want to make it good." That's what I'm saying. He really should get co-credit for that, because he really, God bless him, he put a lot of time and effort into it. That's also fun. But like I said, you got to be in the mood for that one. I think you got to really just. It's a desert board. There's a broken bulldozer too. You didn't mention that. I like the bulldozer.
Yeah, there's a wreck. Yeah, you got a vehicle wreck and a broken bulldozer on board that the Japanese have, along with those broken.
I think the bulldozer is actually rally terrain. Is it rally terrain?
Yes.
Yeah.
Also, yeah, and wreck, gun, and bulldozer all count as building for route and rally.
Because what happened was when they counterattacked, it was one of those cases where there was a certain amount of ferocity. I think they were just pissed off, and they just attacked, screaming and yelling, and the Japanese fell back and they were cowering in these places, And in the 50s, when the 50s cut them up, so it just became a route. But then again, I said, I try to look for things that aren't, like you don't see too often. So, that's why. But in the same interim now, I mean, I have a few Korean ones that I'm going to work with Call on, and these 82nd Airborne. Now I'm getting more. I want to get some that have played, because my good friend Joe Leosi, he designed a scenario like 25 years ago called Final Crisis of Black Bull. Great scenario. It's in critical hit. I think it's critical hit 39, and I know this because every time I see Joe, we talk about how it's doing on Raw, and I love talking to him because I play tested it with him. He's done the scenario, but it's like 50 and 50. It's been played like 100 times. So I'm trying to, what will make me happy is to see something played, 30 times, because now it's almost like, back in the 30s there were 16 baseball teams, right? Now there's 30, so it's hard to repeat. What Joe Torre did with the Yankees. I'm not a Yankee fan. Back in the 90s and early 2000s, it was an incredible feat. So I would like to see some of mine get up into the 30 range. I think Hard Rock is close. I think it's about 28 or 29. But again, I'm a little disappointed that one side seems to be winning a lot more.
Might see enough after this episode goes out. Who knows?
Yeah.
And so what are you working on now? You said you've got some Korean stuff to...
Yeah, I got some Korean stuff. Some of the stuff from that book, Colden in Hell, which is why it's pissing me off. I know where it is. I can go get it, but I don't want to bore you guys watching my pants again. But I have that, and I think the 82nd Airborne, I want to go back to that. I'd like to do a desert scenario, only because, like I said, the one thing that's beautiful about ASL, it's almost like soccer. You really can do anything, I've never done a cave scenario. I've never played a cave scenario. I've never really done a real beach landing. Maybe I did, but it was 20 years ago, and I really didn't know what I was doing, or maybe we were just fuddling through it. So, one thing about the cavalry and the gliders and the mountain troops, I also like the Allied miners. I haven't done any Allied miner ones. A big fan of the Greek campaign, especially against the Italians. The scenarios are a lot of fun. The Greeks get their beer muscles when they're fighting the Italians. The morale goes up. Norway's always been big for me too, because you had the Norwegians who obviously fought very bravely, but there was a spectrum there because you had these German sailors who the destroyers got stuck and they came ashore and they just were pushed into the infantry. You have Alpine troops, you have French Foreign Legion, you have tanks from the French side, you have Fallschirmjägers. Crete's another one. I like Crete. So, but the thing is, what happens is you really gotta get a book and just have the idea germinate. Like that All American All the Way book. I got that book, and even though maybe I'm not gonna get to it for another 5 years. Because Nancy and the album are taking a lot of time. So
It's a problem when you got so much.
believe me, you guys know the 27 Club. The 27. You ever heard of that music?
No.
A lot of
I don't think so.
lot of famous musicians checked out at 27. Jim Morrison, Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, Amy Weinstein, Kurt Cobain. So I told Nancy I want to see 57 Club.
Oh, God, no. You passed it.
I passed 57, but because when you're working on music, I have no record contract or concert tour or any deadlines, but it just drives you nuts. You want to finish it, and it takes so long, So, but I'm gonna start. I was helping Paul with the Spanish Civil War stuff that he was doing, but I had to take a break from it. So I was doing a scenario for him on the Basques because they didn't seem to have too many. I like to find holes and stuff, like with the Waza one. Like I didn't see. I think they only had 1 or 2 South Korean scenarios. So I was actively wanted to say where is there a South Korean? Where did they fight? And this one was kind of cool. Originally, we had the first turn for the rocks to come on the board, but everybody was like, well, you're going to do the move, beforehand because nobody can interfere with you. So why don't you just have the North Koreans go first, set up within
And that saves playing time.
Yeah, it just was, but I kind of like, it's almost like the intentional walk used to be. They actually made you throw the 4 pitches.
Right.
Because you never knew when it was going to get away. Right? So that's kind of like, I made a mistake, Whereas if you're doing it's part of setup, you make a lot less mistakes setting up than moving, But that's the beauty of ASL, though, because like I said, I like certain actions in France. I mean, I got certain. We all have favorite vehicles, so Pans are my favorite. The French armored cars, the Panthards. So anytime one of those scenarios come out, I have to play it. I have to get a hold of it, play it. I like all armored cars. The M8s in the pack call scenario on a Fool's Errand, the pack that you guys were holding up about the Vietnam and the French. They got 4 M8s in that, and I love M8. So anytime I see M8s. But Pan's really are the favorites. And actually, Samia tanks, the French tanks, the S-35s, Samias with the 47, I love them. I got to play them all. When I see one of them come out, I want to play it right away. Because that's that's the fun of it. You like certain things. Certain people like the Chinese.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah. Some people won't play other parts and parts that I like. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think. And that's what I said. I think in the Cavalry article, or maybe the Paratroop article, you really deny yourself if you don't try everything, because it really is like a buffet. Yeah. I mean, some of these historical modules. Okay, if you're not interested, you're not interested. Some of the third party stuff. If you're not interested, you're not interested. But I mean. If you had it relative at the Bulge, well, Piper's a very cool thing. The 82nd Airborne thing looks great to me. I never played it, but it's a smaller one. And everybody knows about the 101st, but the 82nd played a pivotal role in stopping Piper at the shoulder. So, and the quote from that book is during the Bulge, there was an M10 tank destroyer, and they were looking for the front line. And they ran into a paratrooper from the 82nd Airborne. He says, "Park up behind me because I'm not going anywhere. They're not getting past me." And you really got to try it all, But like I said, some of them do take a lot of time and effort because they're just so. But if you got an interest, like I'm always fascinated. Excuse me, fellas. I'm always fascinated by the fact that people don't play more desert, because it really is like totally different And you know what? Once you get the hang of it, it's a pisser because there's no, oh, I'm going to get a -2 shot. Well, no, because you got the Casmin or you got the wind blowing. You know, Casmin.
Yeah,
the-
sun blindness and
what's
all.
that?
Yeah.
Yeah, sun blindness, and you get all those extra die rolls. That third die roll, which is halved, oh, it's going to add them, you know, to your thing. I mean, it's a great thing, and it's fast. I mean, it's you know, you're not worried about line of sight. You're not worried about
Yeah,
you know, you're not
it's
worried
a lot.
about
Yep.
yeah, and the range. Everything is at 20 hexes. You know, it's just, but it's different. I'm not saying it's better. I'm not saying it's better.
Yeah.
See, like,
Yeah, getting rid of all the line of sight. It seems like it'd be the place players should start because they don't
Yeah.
have to worry about looking down from buildings and
Yeah.
behind
because that's the
obstacles and
thing. I
everything.
think that's the thing
Yeah.
that kills a lot of players when they first start playing. You know, is the line of sight. That's if you never played Terrible Swift Sword or you never played Panzer Blitz, you know, it comes second nature if you've played those games. It's obviously a little bit more difficult because there's always those caveats. You know, if you're in a gully, if you're 2 hexes away,
Yeah. And then,
you know. But
Mm.
actually, one scenario that got me into the desert that I loved was A Slug. Do you guys remember A Slug or? You too
yeah,
young?
I had all those.
Sure, Dave.
Yeah.
Gary
No, I had those. Yeah.
Gary Fortenberry did 10 scenarios in A Slug, and like 7 of them are priceless gems. And the one desert one was Desert Citadel,
Yeah.
which was on one board, and Italians were attacking the lengthwise of the board. They had, I think, 5 or 6 M13s, but they had 3 Semivettis. And the French were in trenches, but they had 275s. So it really just became bam, boom, boom. Things are catching on fire. The M13s are blowing up. The Semivettis are trying to lay smoke. You know, that's a good one to start with because it's very quick playing. You know,
Yeah.
but I encourage people to play that. You know, but you know what happens though? I've heard from some players, um, and good ones, people that I know they know what they're talking about. Like you look at the Pacific and you look at the records of some of the scenarios and you question like how, you know, do people really know the Pacific? Do they really know the rules? You know, or there's one time dip my foot in it and walk away. You know,
Right.
you know.
Yeah, and so the
Yeah.
the records can be a little questionable that way. Like I used to not do the vehicle bypass freeze move ever, and so now if I replayed scenario, so maybe I ruined it for that side because I didn't do that to make a good infantry run. You know.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. But the thing is, you know what I like about the record, though, just from my perspective, is you can see how many people are interested in the scenario. You know, even if it's
Yeah, it surely shows.
even if it's somebody. Now, Carl is very strum and drang when he picks the scenarios for the tournament. If it's like 5-3, I mean, right away, I'm not saying it's not enough playings, but he's like, oh, it's you know, I don't want to use it. He wants something that's really close to 50-50. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I don't blame him.
Yeah.
I don't blame him for that, you know, because you don't want to get in the habit of tweaking the scenarios because, you know, because you don't, you know, unless you played it 5 times, you really don't know how to tweak it. You really gotta, you know, because you don't know
better.
that one die roll. That was one good thing about Albany. Another friend of mine who I don't see a lot anymore, but Gary Trezor. Do you guys ever hear his name?
Yep, Gary. We met him. We met him at
Mr.
one of the
Personality.
tournaments. Yeah.
We
Yeah,
like to
strong.
I gave him the he actually learned how to play in my basement, right?
Oh,
And I was the first one to notice he really looked like Mussolini. I mean, so when I used to go to Albany, I used to have he's not there anymore. And I really wish, Gary, if you're watching, come back and play because he hasn't been up there in like 5 years. After COVID, Gary, come up and play. But I used to have this thing, and in Italian, it's, you know, Gary was like, he was like, you know, finish your game or I'm going to have to adjudicate, and you don't want that.
Yeah.
So I had a picture of Mussolini, and it said in Italian, don't force me to adjudicate. So I used to walk around with that, and everybody say, it looks like Gary. And I'm like, yeah, that's who it looks like.
That's great.
Gary is a great player, though. Gary's a great player, and I'm glad he learned
Yeah.
in my basement. He's really an incredible player. He knows the rules really good. And one kudos that I'll give to him, and I hope he's watching this, is
Everybody's watching.
he used to do the scenarios for Albany, and he made sure to play all of them. and I think in a lot of cases, multiple times. He wanted to make sure that those scenarios were good,
Yeah.
you know. And even if they weren't totally balanced, that interesting, that people would want to play them, that the choice wouldn't be like, okay, I only like this scenario, but which one of these 5 scenarios do I want to play?
Yeah, right.
You know?
Yeah.
And that really.
Well, looks like we are running out of time. We got an hour plus show here
Okay.
with you, Mike. So
You're going to cut it down to 3 minutes?
no, it's gonna run pretty much as it is. So I think it's a great interview. So
Okay, thank you. I hope I wasn't too boring.
No,
Oh,
not at all.
no, not at all. Just a
Really?
great mix of history of the game, what it takes to do these scenarios. I think it's great for listeners to get a chance to see all the variety of things that you've worked on here.
One thing about designing, oh, I should have said this up front. I used to, Perry Cock and Brian Yaus. I used to see them in tournaments, and they were like the big boys. They were like, they were like Andrew Lloyd Webber on Broadway. You know what I'm saying? You just looked up to these guys, you know. And I remember just talking to Perry. Perry's very down to earth, and if you have an idea, just play around with it. You know, it's not magic. It's just a little bit of work, you know, and interest. And you know what? You know, nothing makes me happy than have you guys ask to talk to me or call saying, oh, I love dropping topside. It's got to get more play. We got to get it out there. I want it played, you know. I mean, it feels good, but it also feels good when you play test it with a friend of yours and they say, well, I had a great time. And that's how Bro Bray was. It was exactly like that. So hard to balance, you know.
Well, this is a great interview. So remember, everybody, to roll low
And rally well,
but
not
when you're playing us.
playing
right.
Okay, see you guys later. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mike. Great interview. Bye-bye.
Thanks.